So what the bleeding hell was that all about? Well, chances are if you're asking that question, you're not European. Because here's the thing, back in the 80s, until the advent of computers like the Commodore Amiga and the Atari ST, and until the IBM PC started taking off, mostly in the 80s, we had our software delivered to us on tape. In fact, a lot of the reason I bought tapes when I was younger was to share software with people. Now, in America, I know most of you got it on disc, but over here, Commodore 64s were common to have with a cassette deck, and we had other computers here, the Sinclair Spectrum, which I just demonstrated, even though, to be fair, that was through an emulator, the Amstrad CPC, the MSX, lots and lots of computers came, and the primary method of storage for them was the good old cassette tape. And I'll show you the one which I use here. I love this little deck. I really like this. The only thing that I don't like about it is it's mono. So if you've got a stereo version of this deck, I think it was a Miniset 10, it's in nice condition and working and you want to get rid of it, let me know, because I'd really like one of these. But these sort of shoebox recorders we mostly used to load our computer games from. And they had actually the right connections for it. Now, ear, we understand what that is. That's earphone. That's what the sound came out of. Mic, that's input. So if you wanted to save data to a cassette, it would go through the mic. And then the dedicated ones which were designed for use with computers had this REM. And what the REM was, it was a separate signal, and this remote controlled the cassette deck, because some computers like the MSX, for example, and I think the Amstrad 6128, if you had the disc version and you wanted to load from cassette, would send a pause signal, because sometimes the cassette decks needed to pause so that it could uncompress or unpack something and then continue loading more data. So the REM was used for that. The Commodore 64 actually had a dedicated cassette deck which was all to itself, didn't hear the sounds coming out of it, and it was all on a custom plug. But basically, yeah, we used stuff like this for loading computer games from. And it wasn't just that. I mean, you also had industrial applications where you had some embedded systems that in the 70s and 80s would load their programs from a cassette before they moved up to disc. And because of that, there was a slew of tapes in the shops which were like, you know, computer tapes to use with your computer, as if there was something special. The only thing usually special about them was that they were short in length. So, you know, they were maybe C10s, C15s, so that you could put one program per side and, you know, that would do it. The thing about these tapes, and the reason I'm not going to show you one, is because I don't have any. And the reason I don't have any is for two reasons. One, they're not common, therefore they're expensive, and two, they were crap. They really were. They were Type 0 cassettes sold under the professional computer cassette sort of moniker. And the thing is this, right? If we go back to this deck, this is just a little simple two-head deck. And if I was to take, I don't know, let's just go mad. If I was to take an MAR and calibrate it up perfectly on my NAC, and record from a tap, and a tap is a computer file, which is basically a tape file, ergo tap, and compressed to one file so you can load it in an emulator, but you can also load it into some programs like Tap Dancer on Android and get the actual noise out. If I was to record that on an MAR straight from there, chances are it wouldn't work. Because the thing is, the data baud rate on cassette when you're loading it into a computer is so low that the quality doesn't need to be good. It needs one thing: signal, signal, signal. You've got to think these are mostly sine waves that are being put onto the tape. So they record really hot. This deck, for example, does not have a record level meter, but if I bunged this and got the earphone jack out of a PC, ran the tap file through it, recorded the audio on this with no biasing, nothing, no levels, this would make a good recording that I would then be able to load off cassette, whereas an MAR in a NAC deck most probably wouldn't. I don't know why. I've experimented, I've tried good tapes and good decks, good levels, and it just don't work. But a mono deck like this, just a cheap cheap shoebox deck with a cheap tape, it gets a signal. It's what's expected. And I guess that was in design. They didn't want people to have to use top-of-the-line decks with expensive cassettes to load and save data. It needed to be reliable and cheap. So the baud rate was very low because obviously there was going to be some errors, but you could use cheap equipment and cheap tapes. Okay, so there we go. If you didn't already know that, that's the sort of history of loading tapes and basic computer storage in Britain in the 80s. So what does that mean? Well, you know, I just loaded this one. It's a good game. I like Sheldon's Road, but the tapes themselves, just ordinary, cheap, almost Type 0 ferrics. Nothing special about them at all. So you wouldn't think that this was really something to do with music. Well, let's have a see, because, you know, we got tapes like this coming out, you know, the professional tape. Like the computer tape, the professional tape. Side 1, ferric, IEC, you know, professional cassette. You look at the J cards, you know, nothing there. Just the absolute basics. And this one it says actually, yeah, assembled in the United Kingdom. I'm betting it's going to be Chinese tape in this, but anyway. So that's like sort of one. And then we've got this one, which you guys in America will really know. The Maxell Professional Industrial Communicator Series. Low noise, high output. And when you hear, well, when you see low noise, high output on a tape, it usually means it's rubbish. Because it just is, you know, all the Type Zeros, etc. are low noise, high output. Just standard marketing bump. But if we look at this Maxell, this is a quite nice tape. I mean, the shell on it looks very similar to, you know, URs of that sort of time period. And the hubs are proper Maxell hubs. You know, they sort of, I don't know, the old Roman sort of car wheel sort of hubs. But the shell itself is nice. The tape pack is nice and put together. It's a screwed shell. The J card, yeah, I mean, title, running time, you know, this is sort of designed, you can see sort of maybe for data, most likely for interviews and voice work, you know, police interviews, etc. But it's got that, it's got some stickers with it. And the shell, you know, the actual case is a nice case. It's one of the rounded Maxells. It's not a slim case. It doesn't have the normal Maxell hubs. If you notice, Maxell have usually a very pronounced circular hub, mostly. But this one is assembled in Mexico. There've been lots of iterations of this tape. But on the whole, you know, it looks like it means business. And normally when you see professional on something, you know, it's like, oh, this is a professional version. But the thing is about these tapes, and why I'm doing this video, is that these tapes are cheap. Because nobody really uses cassettes for data anymore or for voice work. You know, every mobile phone's got a voice recorder in. If you're loading computer games off cassette, well, you're not really. You're going to be emulating them, or you can get little dongles, or even in the case of the likes of the Spectrum, which would take a normal cassette deck, you can just get them as WAV files, put them on your MP3 player or phone and play them straight from the headphone jack straight out. So, because these have no real professional application anymore, and because they're labelled as professional, industrial, blah, 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 voice only, these are cheap tapes. I mean, okay, these ones aren't on my store, but simply because these Maxell never got sold in Europe from what I can see. They're an American-only tape, and there's been many iterations. And these C90 PMD magnetic ones, again, these are cheap. You look on eBay for these, you're going to find you can get maybe 100 of these if you're in America for less than $60. They are very cheap tapes. So the point of this video is, okay, these are cheap, these are industrial, these are voice only. But are they? I mean, think about it, especially in the case of Maxell. You're churning out millions and millions of Maxell UR, right? Are you going to then go and start up another production line and do another tape formulation just to have a professional series tape? Or will you just take your UR tape and put it in a professional, and I'm doing air quotes here, and I hate air quotes, in a professional packaging, no mess, no fuss, looks like it does the business. That's what I'd do. I wouldn't create a new tape line, but let's have a see, because we're going to have a play with these, we're going to have a listen, and we're going to compare them to a couple of normal everyday ferrics that were available around the same time. I mean, I'm thinking this is 90s, this one maybe 2000s, but let's have a play and let's have a see if these really are voice only. Okay, so I'm going to use my Aiwa ADS 950 for this again, simply because I'm curious to look at the bias and levels that are needed for these tapes. So, first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to have a look at the actual tape, and if we can see the nice brown colour here, so, you know, it's a nice brown, it's shiny, can't see any bubbles in it, it doesn't look like sandpaper, and I'm going to take the Saihan version of the UR to compare it to, because there's similar sort of time periods, and if we look at the tape there, again it's a nice shiny brown. In fact, if we put them together, very similar, very similar. But let's let the bison sort it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the UR in, I'm going to reset my bison levels in here to 0, let's use inbuilt test tones, and let's see what we need to do to get this bias right. So the Saihan UR, very good. You know, the bias and the levels are very similar, and that's how it should be. Good tape, the biasing and the levels are very similar. So let's just turn the rec sensitivity level up, and pretty much without having to mess around with the bias, that's where it is. Add level, and it's there. Cool beans. Right, let's take that out, and let's try the communicator and see what levels and bias that needs. Okay, that just needs, well, a smidge, just a tiniest smidge, and it's pretty much there. I mean, maybe it just needs a little bit of negative, but it's not a million miles out. Now, I know that levels and bias figures do not mean the tape's the same. I know that, you know, you can have many tapes biased at the same place with the same amount of level and a very different tape, but I just thought it was interesting to see that, you know, we've got two Maxell tapes here. One of them's designed for music and stuff, and one's supposed to be professional for voice, and they pretty much bias and level the same. But let's have a listen to the tape itself. Let's put some music in it, some more royalty-free music, and let's see what it sounds like. I mean, first I'll give you a little blast of the old tape hiss so you can hear it for yourself, and then we'll see how it records music and see whether it can actually handle music at all. Okay, not, you know, there's hiss there, but it's the ferric. What do you want? Okay, let's play some music. Bearing in mind, this is from an MP3 because I'm having to use royalty-free music. Now, this is peaking at +6. This is a tape. Let's have a listen to the source. Back to the tape. Okay, let's give it a bit of Dolby B. Bear in mind, you never run a Dolby tape this hot. Source. Turn the Dolby off. Turn the level down a bit. Let's have it peaked about 0. Let's put some Dolby S on, just for fun. the source. Back to the tape. Seems a bit hotter with Dolby S on. Anyhow, turn the Dolby off. Let's crank it up again. You know what? Let's listen to the hiss a bit. I'm going to try a slightly different bit of music. I'm going to try something a bit more challenging. Just bear with me a second. Let's put Bongo Madness on again. We had this on another video. It was good. Let's go back to the source. Highs and bass in there, but of course there's always a background here, some bits of music like this, so let's put Dolby B on again. And back to the source. And back to the tape. So what do you think? A cassette designed for voice only, that regularly sell for less than $1, that can take +6 signal without distortion, or at least not audible distortion, and that when you put Dolby B on, even on music which has quiet bits in, or you know that it's not full, you can hear the hiss. You put Dolby B on it at +6 and it sounds like that. What do you think? Dictation only crap? No, I don't think so. To be honest with you, let's try something a bit different. Let's put in a TDK-D, the good old D. You know, the sort of as low as you want to go normally, according to, you know, the experts in inverted commas for music grade tape. Let's just put this in. Let's calibrate it up. And let's have a see how it copes with Bongo Madness. Sounds rude, that, doesn't it? Oh, you're going to cope with Bongo Madness. Right, let's have a see, firstly, how this bias is compared to the Maxell communicator. Okay, as we can see here, the TDK-D needs the level turning down compared to it. So it's got about a mol on it, the D. And it also needs positive bias to bring it in check. Okay, a bit of positive bias. Okay, right. That's where the D is. Let's give the D some Bongo Madness. Let's turn Dolby off and see how the D does. The hiss there doesn't sound noticeably less than the Maxell. Okay, let's give it some Dolby B. Okay, back to the source. Now, I don't know about you, but with Dolby on, the top end doesn't sound as good on this D. Yeah, there's more top end here on the source. That can't be right. I'm sorry. We've got to do this again. Maybe my ears are popped or something. Because there, with Dolby B on, the D sounded more muted at the top end than the communicator did. Let me just bias this up again. Right, let's do some more bongo madness now on this communicator. Bear with me. Right, okay. Take it from where it was. Dolby B again. This is a tape. Oh no, to be fair, no, I'm noticing it, yeah. This does sound a bit more muted on the treble. So I say, actually, if your hiss doesn't bother you, record this on the D without Dolby. But this is running hot, this is peaking at +6. Like I say, there's not a lot in it with a D, really. Not a lot in it at all, considering that, you know, a D will most probably go for at least twice as much as a communicator will. And there's not a lot in it. And to be honest, the shell feels sturdier on this than the D, which is, yeah. Anyway, right. That's that one, and let's just do another one as the bass level now. This one is supposedly assembled in England. The PMD. Let's have a see how this biases up compared to the other tapes that we've biased up to date. So, okay, so this one needs a bit of negative, right? Okay, this needs a smidge, just a tiny suggestion of negative bias, and less level. I mean, to be honest with you, this needs less level than the D and the UR needed. The D and the communicator needed. So that's a good sign. I've got to be honest, I've never really recorded on these before. Let's see how this copes with a bit of bongo madness. I'll put it back to 5 so it peaks at +6 like the other ones. Let's give it some bongo madness. The hiss, yeah, it's quite hissy, that. Quite hissy. Okay, let's go. Let's give it a Dolby B. Back to the source. Okay, back to the tape. Sounds like on this. Source. Tape. And Dolby off. And this is a thing about cassettes, and like I say, I'm not doing these videos for the audiophiles. You guys know your stuff. I mean, I don't ever want to be classed as an audiophile. I really don't. Don't call me that. I forget which musician it was, but there's this quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's right. He said that people use their equipment to listen to my music. Audiophiles use my music to listen to their equipment. All I'm saying is, in the vast majority of cassettes that I've tested, the only ones that I've ever said they're rubbish, they're junk, don't use them, are ones that have either over the years gone bad due to bad storage or age, or the ones that were always dirt cheap, like the ones you used to get in a 3-pack for 50 pence without any shell, J-cards or cases with them. You know, the Type Zeros. These two cassettes are sold as professional, and therefore when people see them they think voice only. The fact of the matter is, to me, these sound just as musical as any entry-level, half-decent Type 1. It's as simple as that, and you heard it. So let's go to the conclusion. The philosopher Kierkegaard said, "You label me, you negate me." What does that mean? It means if you put a label on someone or something, then you negate what they actually are. People will read the label, see the label, and assume that is all that you are, when you could be so much more. These are the same. It's not because the manufacturers labelled them in this way to do this on purpose. It's they had a market for these. People who were doing voice, interviews, industrial applications, maybe they got a thought in their head that if they were buying professional tapes, as opposed to the ones you could buy in a shop, they were getting something better, more suited to the purpose. So I can understand why these cassettes exist. However, in this day and age of rising cassette prices, these are about as cheap as they get without going to Type 0 sandpaper tape. And this is a point. These aren't Type 0 sandpaper tapes. Look at the tapes like I keep showing you. This isn't sandpaper. This is lovely deep brown ferric that's nice and shiny. And it's a case in both of them. I mean, this is really brown ferric. I mean, this looks like proper old school ferric. But both of these tapes, as we've demonstrated there, are not just fit for voice. They can record music and record music well. Especially if you like Dolby. You know, you put the Dolby on there. I mean, yes, I was running it at +6 with Dolby Big. You'd never normally do that. You'd run it at around 0 or the Dolby mark. But it was still handling it. With Dolby S, they sounded great with Dolby S. Really did. I mean, yes, I'm not using, you know, a reel-to-reel Atari, which is going into my Sugden preamp, which is then going into my Macintosh main amp through valves. No, I'm not. So I'm not using the world's cleanest source, and I'm sure if you do that, you will be able to tell some differences. But I'm saying, as always, I'm making this for the rest of us. The audiophiles know this. The audiophiles have spent the thousands. The rest of us who are buying decent decks on eBay or out of thrift stores and then just want some nice cassettes to record on, these regularly go for around, well, they go for a lot less than the equivalent TDK, Sony or Maxell, you know, regular Type 1s, your URs, your HFs, your Ds. These go cheaper. You can, you know, I'm sure if you look on eBay now, you can find hundreds of these for, you know, I think I paid about $70 for 100 of these. Yes, I know, a dirty flipper. I'm selling them more expensive on my website. I know, because I had to import them. I had to pay taxes, and I've got to pay VAT, and then when I sell them, I've got to pay VAT, and then I've got to pay for the profit. So I'm not trying to, you know, expunge myself here from making profit. You know, at the end of the day, I have to. But if you're in America, these are very cheap. And if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get a stack of regular Maxell URs, get some of these. They're cheaper and they're just as good in my opinion. Again, these ones are a bit of an anomaly. If you're in the UK, these crop up quite regularly. And as you heard, they're a perfectly decent cassette. So it's all about labels. And again, I'm just trying to show you something which might be worth your consideration. So thanks for watching the video. And as always, please do subscribe, please do like, and please do tell other people about it. Keeps me motivated to do it, because as you might have noticed that my videos are not monetized in any way, shape or form. There's no adverts in the middle. It's as simple as that, and I don't do sponsorship. So thanks for your time, and as always, take care until I do the next video. Bye bye.